What if the man your ex-wife laughed at for selling fruit was secretly worth over $1 billion? You will not believe what happened next. Marcus, is that really you? Still selling fruit? I guess some people never become what they promised. Some promises take longer. Then her eyes dropped to the blue enamel token beside my cash box. Her smile disappeared for half a second. Vanessa recovered first. By Monday morning, this market belongs to my foundation. She raised a redevelopment notice for everyone to see. I could have told her my private company was worth more than $1 billion. But revealing that now could destroy the only leverage I had to save this place. So I smiled. Then Monday should be interesting. Vanessa held that smile a moment longer, then turned back to her donors like nothing had happened. She did not argue with me. She did not need to. In her mind, she had already won. And the man behind a fruit table was not worth another sentence of her morning. She walked her group toward the north stalls, pointing at awnings and talking about foot traffic. And the crowd folded in behind her like she was already the owner. My daughter held up a melon. Daddy, this one looks like a football. Every year you say that about a different melon. Every year I am right. I laughed. And for a few seconds, the market went back to being just a market. Then Renee came around the side of the stand, arms crossed, and I knew the weekend was not going to stay that simple. You could not have called first. She said. I wanted to work the stand, Renee. That is all. Nothing you do is ever just one thing, Marcus. She glanced toward the crowd still trailing Vanessa. You show up the same week the vote gets moved up, and you want me to believe it is a coincidence. That was news to me, and it must have shown on my face because Renee's arms tightened. You did not know. Moved up from when? 3 weeks. The board voted Thursday. Final certification is Monday morning instead of next month. She said it like she was testing whether I already knew, and relaxed slightly when she saw I did not. The foundation has been saying it is for the vendor's own good. New stalls, advertising, debt relief, guaranteed customers. Why does saving the market require taking control of it? Renee did not answer that. She looked past me at the token by the cash box instead. The same look Vanessa and Eleanor Price had given it a minute earlier, though I did not understand yet why it mattered to any of them. Several vendors owe money, she said instead. Roof, refrigeration, all of it went up this year. Vanessa is offering real relief. I know you do not want to hear that, but it is true. You left. She stayed, Renee added, quieter. And it landed the way she meant it to. I did not have an answer for that, either. Not one she would have accepted that morning. A vendor 2 stalls down, Mr. Odell, who had sold tomatoes at Hawthorne Road longer than I had been alive, waved a white envelope at his neighbor, frowning at it. I caught the return address before he folded it away. A private lending name I did not recognize. What is that about? I asked Renee. Routine. Some of the vendors carry short-term notes through the market's finance partner. Nothing new. It was not nothing new to me. I knew what a payment demand envelope looked like when the underlying loan was about to be called. And Mr. Odell's face when he read it was not the face of a man getting a routine reminder. I looked at the token by the scale, then at the folded notice still in Vanessa's hand across the lot. Stopping the land vote had felt an hour ago like the whole fight. Now I was not sure it was even the real one. If you are enjoying this story so far, please subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. I decided to start with what I could prove. Vanessa kept telling donors the vendors had approved this unanimously. And if that was not true, it was the fastest way to slow Monday down without saying one word about who I really was. I had not told anyone at Hawthorne Road, not even Renee, that the company I had built out of a single refrigerated truck now moved produce for grocers across 4 states. Or that my share of it was worth more than $1 billion on paper. Blue Harbor was in the middle of closing a private restructuring. And the fewer people who knew my name was attached to it, the cleaner that closing would go. But it was not only the deal. If I walked into this market as a rich man handing out promises, I would be exactly what Vanessa was already calling me on television that night before I had even heard her say it. A man who shows up with money expects everyone to be grateful. I wanted proof first. I told myself trust could wait until after the proof. That was the mistake, though I did not know it yet. My father sold melons off this same table when I was 14. Back when the only cooling we had was a wet burlap sack and whatever shade the oak tree threw by noon. I watched him lose half a truckload some Augusts because there was nowhere cold to put it. That is the problem Blue Harbor was built to solve. And standing at that table again, I could feel exactly why. But that was a thought for later, not a story I needed to tell anyone that morning. The vendors in front of me had a more immediate problem. I spent the afternoon walking the row, asking simple questions. Who signed? What were you told you were approving? Who explained the new lease to you? Who holds the note on what you owe? The answers did not match each other. Mrs. Calloway, who had run the flower stall for 20 years, thought she had agreed to a roof repair fund. 2 stalls down, a young couple selling honey, thought they had signed on to a refinancing that would lower their monthly payment. Almost nobody I talked to believed they had voted to hand over long-term control of their stalls. Somewhere between what the foundation explained in that meeting room and what got written into the paperwork, the story had changed. That evening, Renee had the community channel on in the market office while she closed out the register. Vanessa was on, calm and polished under studio lights, talking about the redevelopment the way she always did, like she was the only adult in a room full of children about to make a terrible mistake. There are people who show up, she told the interviewer, and people who disappear the moment their name becomes valuable, then reappear the moment there is something to lose. This community deserves better than absentee heirs treating this market like an inheritance they forgot to collect. She never said my name. She did not need to. Renee's eyes cut toward me for half a second before she looked back at the screen, and I understood that Vanessa had just finished writing the story everyone in that room was going to believe about me before I ever said a word in my own defense. After Renee left, I sat alone with the redevelopment package she had printed for the board. I found the founder consent page near the back, a list of original cooperative shares, each one marked approved or declined. Hale founding share, surrendered. I read it twice. My father never surrendered anything in his life. I reached into my pocket. The token was still there, cold and small against my palm, the way it had been every day since he pressed it into my hand. I found Eleanor Price the next morning at the Land Trust's small office behind the county courthouse before it opened to the public. She had been the one person at the market who reacted to the token instead of my face, and I wanted to know why before I decided what to do with what I had found. I set it on her desk without explanation. She picked it up, turned it under her desk lamp, ran a thumbnail along the edge where the enamel met the metal. Where did you get this? My father. He got it when the original vendors formed the cooperative. She checked the stamp, the old serial mark worn thin along one side, the word stall 9 pressed into the back. She set it down carefully, like it was worth more than it looked. I have seen exactly 3 of these still in circulation, she said. The trust keeps a record of every founding share and every one of them is supposed to be accounted for as either held or formally surrendered. She tapped the redevelopment packet I had brought with me, open to the page I had read the night before. This says the Hale share was surrendered years ago. It was not. If this token is authentic, Eleanor said, then the consent record is wrong. And I cannot certify a land transfer on a record I know to be wrong. I felt something loosen in my chest for the first time since Vanessa's laugh had carried across the parking lot. But Eleanor was not finished. Understand what this does and does not do, Mr. Hale. It does not stop the redevelopment. It means the record needs correcting before the vote can proceed on schedule. That is a delay, not a defeat. I would hate for you to walk out of here thinking the fight is over. I did not really. But it felt like the first ground I had stood on all week that was not given to me by Vanessa. By noon, Eleanor's office had formally requested clarification from the foundation on the founding share discrepancy. I expected Vanessa to be furious. Instead, she stood in front of her donors that afternoon and called it an administrative error, calm as ever, almost bored by it. These old cooperative records are decades out of date, she told them. We are happy to correct the file. I do not think one old token should stop progress for dozens of families who are counting on this redevelopment. By evening, half the market had heard the story her way. A clerical mistake, nothing more, and a stubborn man holding up help for his neighbors over a piece of enamel his father left him. She had not lost. She had turned my proof into a character problem. And she had done it without raising her voice once. She found me alone near the melon table as the market closed for the day. Why do you even care, Marcus? She asked. You have not cared about this place in years. Because you are trying to take something you never built. You still think this is about the land. She said it almost gently, like I had missed something obvious, and walked away before I could ask what she meant. I stood there, turning the sentence over long after her car pulled out of the lot, certain I just heard the edge of something bigger than a redevelopment vote, and no idea yet what it was. Renee caught the tail end of Vanessa's donor speech from the market office doorway. She did not say anything to me about it that night, but I noticed something in her face I had not expected. Not relief, the way I would have guessed, but a small, private frown, like a number that was not adding up. She told me later, much later, that it was that afternoon she first pulled the old founding share list herself, and matched it against Vanessa's file. Vanessa had personally reviewed that consent record months earlier. A mistake like that should not have survived her attention. Renee did not say a word to me about it. She just started quietly comparing vendor payment records against the default notices going out from the foundation's lender. And she kept what she found to herself. 2 days later, Renee showed up at the Melons stand holding a single printed page. Her jaw set the way it used to get when we were kids, and she had found something she did not want to be right about. I need you to look at this, she said. Not because I trust you, because I do not trust what I am seeing. And you are the only one around here who reads numbers the way you do. It was Mr. Odell's account. His payments were marked current in our own bookkeeping month after month, right up through the one he just gotten the demand letter for. But the lender's file showed him behind. I traced it the way I trace any shipment that went missing between two warehouses. The money left Mr. Odell's account on time. It landed in the market's clearing account on time. Somewhere between the clearing account and the private lender, the payment got relabeled, moved into a different column, counted against a different month. The money existed. It had simply stopped being counted as paid. That is not a mistake you make by accident. I told her. Somebody set the account up to do that. Renee did not answer right away. When she did, it was not about the account. You left. She said again. But this time it was not an accusation thrown to end a conversation. It was a real question. Why? Really? I owed her the truth, so I gave it to her. After Vanessa took her half out of the business account and walked, I did not know how to be around anybody who might leave again. So I stopped letting anyone close enough to. I told myself sending money home counted as being here. It did not. I made it easy for you to believe I had stopped caring, Renee. I never stopped. I just stopped showing it in any way that mattered to you. She did not forgive me standing there. I did not expect her to. But something in her face eased just slightly. The particular tightness a person carries when they have decided a story might not be as simple as they had let themselves believe. She picked the printed page back up. I am not doing this for you. She said. I am doing it because I signed off on these books for years and I want to know if I have been lying to people without knowing it. That was enough. It was more than I had had from her in a decade. Vanessa came to me the following afternoon with an offer instead of an accusation. Which told me she had felt something shift, too. I can preserve your father's stall exactly as it is, she said. I will put the Hale name on the new pavilion. All you have to do is hand over that token and stand next to me Sunday night and say you support the redevelopment. No. You always did choose pride over practicality. She said it lightly, but it found the exact spot she meant it to. There was truth buried in it, and that was what made it sting. I had chosen pride plenty of times when practicality would have cost me less. I did not take the deal. Instead, I spent that evening doing something I should have started with. I went vendor to vendor and told each of them to request their own complete payment history directly from the lender in their own name. Not to hand the documents to me. To keep them. I was done being the only person collecting proof. If this was going to work, the vendors needed to hold their own evidence, not borrow mine. Renee moved on her own front, too. Quietly, without telling me. She pulled the routing instructions the foundation had sent out months earlier. The ones that told vendors which account to route their notes through. The lender receiving those notes had not been chosen by the market board. It had been selected directly out of Vanessa's office. Renee copied the routing notice and said nothing to anyone. Not sure yet what she was holding. Eleanor called me that night. The trust has agreed to suspend Monday's certification until the founding share discrepancy is formally reviewed, she said. It was the win I had been working towards since the hook of Vanessa's laugh first landed on me. Before I could feel the full weight of it, Eleanor added one more line. The foundation filed something else this afternoon. I do not know what it is yet, but I thought you should know it is coming. The trust made it official the next morning. A notice went up at the market entrance. Monday's automatic certification was suspended pending review of the founding share consent record. Word moved down the row faster than I could walk it. Mrs. Calloway hugged me without asking first. Mr. Odell shook my hand and admitted he had figured I was exactly what Vanessa said I was, showing up now that the land was worth something, and he was glad to be wrong. Renee allowed herself something close to a smile, standing at the edge of the crowd with her arms folded a little less tightly than they had been all week. Across the lot, Vanessa's donors were not smiling. A few of them checked their phones and drifted toward their cars early, the way people do when they have started doing math about a deal that used to look simple. We slowed her down, I told Renee. No, she said. You stopped her. I should have heard how dangerous that sentence was. I had the token. I had Eleanor's procedural backing. I had vendor statements lining up behind me and a sister who was, for the first time in years, standing next to me instead of across from me. The transfer was paused. It felt like enough. Vanessa did not argue with any of it. She found Eleanor near the office trailer and thanked her, warm and composed, for doing things properly. Then she left early before the crowd had even finished thinning out. I watched her go and noticed something that should have worried me more than it did. She did not look defeated. She looked almost relieved. The way a person looks when a long wait is finally over. That evening, every major vendor at Hawthorne Road opened the same envelope. Their outstanding business notes had been called in full, due before Monday morning. Anyone who could not pay in time would see control of their stall lease transferred directly to the lender. Vanessa had never needed the land vote to be her only road into this market. She had simply let us celebrate stopping the one she was willing to lose. The lender confirmed the notices were valid before I had finished my coffee the next morning. Eleanor could not touch them. Her authority covered the land transfer, not private debt between a vendor and a lender the foundation happened to have picked. The token that had felt like solid ground 2 days earlier suddenly looked very small next to a stack of overdue business notes. The damage came from 4 directions at once. The token could not reach the debt problem at all. Proving a founding share had not been surrendered did nothing for a man who owed money by Monday. Renee found out from someone other than me how much I actually understood about business financing. And it landed as one more thing I had chosen not to tell her. Vanessa released a photograph to a few donors of me talking quietly with 3 vendors behind the stalls. And by that afternoon, the story circulating was that I was organizing a secret buyout of my own. And vendors who had hugged me 2 days earlier stopped meeting my eyes, afraid of being connected to whatever I was supposedly building behind their backs. Vanessa delivered the worst of it in front of a packed market meeting that evening. She let the room settle, then asked one question, simple and direct. "Who exactly are you representing, Marcus?" I could have told her. I did not. "Myself," I said. It was true. It also sounded like exactly what a man hiding something would say. "Then why," Vanessa said, turning to the room, "should anyone trust a man who keeps asking for everyone else's financial records while refusing to explain his own interest in this market?" I watched the room turn. Not all at once, just enough. A few nods, a few arms crossing. People who had stood beside me a day earlier suddenly were not sure they wanted to be seen standing there. Renee found me outside afterward, and for the first time all week, she was not asking questions. She was finished with them. "This is what you always do," she said. "You decide what everyone else is allowed to know, and then you are surprised when it costs you their trust." "Renee, I can explain." "You always can." Later. She walked to her car without looking back. Vanessa had not beaten me because she had more power than I did. She had beaten me because I handed her the one thing that made her accusation land. My secrecy was not protecting anyone anymore. It had become her best weapon against me, and she knew exactly how to use it. I sat alone at my father's melon table after the lot emptied out, the blue token cold under my thumb the way it always was at the end of a long day. For years I had believed that keeping people from knowing what I was doing kept them from being able to interfere with it. That instinct had built a company. It had also cost me a marriage, a sister, and now, apparently, a market full of people who had finally started trusting me 2 days before I proved them wrong, too. If proving Vanessa's paperwork false was not going to be enough, if it had never been enough, then the real question was not how to beat her anymore. It was what it would actually take to give these people a choice that did not depend on trusting either one of us. So I stopped trying to prove Vanessa wrong. That fight was over, whether I admitted it or not. What mattered now was whether Hawthorne Road could survive without needing either of us to win. The next morning I walked the row again, but I asked a different question. Not who signed what or who owed whom. I asked each vendor what it would actually take for them to stay here without depending on Vanessa's foundation or on me. The answers were plain and practical. The kind of answers people give when they have been thinking about a problem for a long time, and nobody has ever asked them directly. Buyers they could count on. Refrigeration that did not fail every August. Shipping that showed up on schedule. Debt that could not be called in and used against them. Control over their own leases in writing permanently. Those were not mysteries to me. Those were the exact problems Blue Harbor had been built to solve for grocers 3 times this size. I spent that night drafting something I should have proposed a week earlier instead of chasing paperwork. A vendor cooperative. Blue Harbor would guarantee produce purchases at a fair standing price season after season. A neutral escrow structure run by a third party neither Vanessa nor I controlled would refinance every legitimate note currently held by the foundation's lender. And the cooperative board, the body that actually ran the thing, would be made up entirely of vendors, not me. My money would go into a fund I could not personally withdraw from and could not use to control a single stall. Making that real before Monday meant committing real capital before I knew whether anyone would even accept it. I signed the authorization anyway without putting my name anywhere near the source of the funds. It was the first bet I had made all week that could genuinely cost me something. Then I did something else I had not done all week. I went to Renee. Not with a plan to defend, but with the whole proposal in her hands. "I am not asking you to trust me," I told her. "Read everything. Tell me where I am wrong." She did not hug me. She did not say it was a good idea. She took the folder without a word and left. And that was more than I had earned from her in years. So I let it be enough. Renee spent the next day doing something on her own that I did not find out about until later. She went back to the vendors, the same ones who had volunteered to pull their own payment histories from the lender. And this time, she compared what they handed her against the foundation's routing instructions line by line. What she found matched what I had traced days earlier, but from a different direction. Every vendor had paid. Every payment had cleared. The defaults had not happened because anyone stopped paying. They had been created afterward, once the routing changed hands. It looked to her less like a mistake and more like a plan. But she had no way to prove where that plan came from, not yet, not without something independent to stand behind it. The foundation set a public redevelopment meeting for Sunday evening, the last chance before Monday's deadline to lock in donor commitments and push the remaining vendors toward signing. Vanessa meant it to be her closing argument. I decided it would be something else instead. The one room where the whole community could finally see every option in front of them at the same time, laid out plainly, with nothing left for anyone to guess at. I did not know, walking into that Sunday, whether a single person in that room would choose to stand beside me. By Saturday, I had 3 things ready. A cooperative proposal the vendors could actually read and understand. A written purchase guarantee from Blue Harbor promising to buy their produce at a fair price for years, not seasons. And an independent financing commitment sitting in escrow held by someone neither Vanessa nor I could touch. What I still had not done was say my own name out loud in the same sentence as Blue Harbor's. Eleanor agreed to attend Sunday's meeting when I asked her. But she made her limits clear before she said yes. I can verify procedure, she told me. I can confirm what the record shows and what it does not. I cannot stand up in that room and tell those people whom to trust. That part is not mine to give you. It was exactly the boundary I needed her to hold. Anything more from her would have made this her victory instead of theirs. Renee came to me Saturday night with what she had found, and for the first time all week her voice shook a little, telling me. The foundation told vendors to route their payments through a clearing account, she said. That account is controlled by the same financial group that is calling their notes as defaulted. Vanessa's explanation to them was false, Marcus. I can prove it. She stopped. But I work for that office. Saying this out loud means resigning. It means losing my salary, my benefits, everything I have built here the last 6 years. And it means telling everyone I administered a system I never questioned closely enough. I did not tell her what to do. That was not mine to decide for her, not anymore. I just told her the truth would matter more coming from her than from me, and left it there. Vanessa, meanwhile, had learned enough to know something was coming, even without knowing exactly what. Word had reached her that I had assembled some kind of alternative financing plan, and her working theory was that a larger company was using me as a convenient local face. She spent Saturday preparing 2 counterattacks for Sunday night. The first was to paint any cooperative as an outside takeover dressed up as community rescue. The second, if the room started turning against her, was to demand immediate proof that my financing existed at all. She was certain, absolutely certain, that I could not produce it. That confidence was about to matter more than she knew. I spent Sunday afternoon at my father's table instead of preparing a speech. My children stacked melons into neat pyramids, the way they did every summer, arguing over whose pyramid was straighter, completely uninterested in redevelopment votes, or lenders, or anything happening across town. My son finally asked the question I had been circling around in my own head all week. Dad, why do you still do this? You have got your other job. I thought about how to answer that honestly. Because this is where your grandfather taught me not to confuse price with value, I told him. Everything I built started at this table. If I ever get too big to remember that, I have lost the thing that made any of it worth building. I picked up the token from beside the scale and held it while he went back to stacking. If I wanted this community to trust anything I put in front of them that night, I could not keep handing them the convenient parts of myself and hiding the rest. Half a truth from a man asking for full trust was not going to hold. Not after everything. Vanessa had already used my silence to build against me. I called my company's counsel that evening. I authorized public disclosure of my ownership in Blue Harbor if the situation required it, understanding exactly what that would cost. The confidential restructuring we had been finishing for months could be damaged by early exposure, and a significant future payment tied to its quiet closing would very likely disappear the moment my name became public. I signed the authorization anyway. Whatever happened in that room Sunday night, revealing who I was not going to be a victory lap. It was going to cost me something real. And that was exactly why it might finally mean something. The community center was full by 7. Vendors along one side, donors and foundation board members along the other. A couple of reporters near the back. Eleanor Price seated with the land trust representatives near the aisle. Renee stood near the vendors section instead of the office staff row, which I noticed and did not mention. Vanessa stood at the front already, composed in a pastel jacket that looked pressed for television. She opened with projections on a screen behind her. Modern stalls, clean walkways, numbers about foot traffic and revenue that sounded impressive if you did not ask where they came from. She called resistance to the plan nostalgia dressed up as principal. Then she put up a photograph of me behind my father's table, apron dusted with melon juice, and let it sit there a moment. "This is the man asking you to reject professional financing," she said. A few people laughed, quiet and uncertain. The same laugh that had followed me across the parking lot a week earlier. I let it pass without reacting. I had had a week to get used to being underestimated in that particular photograph. When it was my turn, I did not lead with a speech. I laid out the cooperative in plain terms. Vendors would keep permanent control of their own leases. Produce purchases would be guaranteed at a fair standing price for years. Every legitimate debt currently held against them would be refinanced through a neutral escrow structure. No donor, no foundation, no single person could ever hold enough votes to seize control of it. Funded by whom? Vanessa asked, already smiling, already certain of the answer she expected. Blue Harbor Cold Logistics. The room shifted. Vanessa's smile widened. "So, you work for them?" "No." I let that sit half a second. "I built them." I told them plainly. "I founded Blue Harbor almost 20 years ago out of a single refrigerated truck. I still hold the majority of it. My share of the company is worth more than $1 billion. Vanessa's expression changed in a way I had not seen from her all week. Something close to genuine surprise breaking through the composure. This was the moment the whole town would eventually hear about. The moment the title of this whole ugly week had been pointing toward. It was not the win. Vanessa recovered fast, faster than I expected, and turned it on me before the room had even finished absorbing it. "He stood behind a roadside table," she said loud enough to carry to the back row. "Pretending to be one of you while sitting on a fortune he never mentioned once. Ask yourselves what else he has not told you." It landed exactly the way she meant it to. I watched vendors who had started to lean toward the cooperative pull back into themselves again, uncertain all over. I did not deny any of it. "She is right that I let people believe things that were not the whole truth," I said. I told myself keeping quiet was protecting this deal, protecting all of you from being used by a rich man's promises before you had seen proof. That was partly true. It was also me hiding. The way I have been hiding from something close to me for a long time. I looked at Renee for a second before I went on. Selling melons at that table was never an act. My father built that stand. I work it because it is where everything I built started. And if I ever forget that, I have lost the only thing worth building it for. I turned back to the room. If knowing what I own makes you want no part of this cooperative, reject it. But reject it knowing the truth, not the piece of it I was comfortable giving you. Vanessa was not finished. She held up a lender agreement of her own. "None of this matters," she said. "The lender already controls every note in default. Your cooperative cannot refinance debt it does not have the authority to touch. She wanted the room to see one more time that she still held something no one else in that building could take from her. That was when Renee stood up. She resigned right there from the market office tied to Vanessa's foundation. She said she had personally processed vendor payments for years and every one of those payments had cleared on time. The defaults had not happened because vendors stopped paying. They had happened after the foundation changed where those payments were routed. She is protecting her brother, Vanessa said quickly. Nothing more. It hurt exactly as much as Vanessa intended it to because everyone in that room, including Renee, knew how much of the week she had spent angry at me. I did not answer for her. Instead, I asked the escrow representative I had brought to confirm one thing on the record. A single certified account statement. It showed, in a sequence any person in that room could follow by ear, that every vendor payment had entered the required clearing account on schedule. And that the financial group connected to Vanessa's own redevelopment plan had reclassified those accounts as unpaid only after the money had already arrived. The defaults were created after the fact, not before it. Eleanor stood then and confirmed only what sat inside her own authority. The founding share consent record Vanessa's foundation had submitted was inaccurate. Certification could not proceed on that record. A neutral financial representative confirmed the payment routing independently. Neither of them defeated Vanessa for me. They confirmed what Renee and the vendors and I had already built the evidence to prove. Vanessa argued for a moment that everything she had done had been necessary to guarantee the redevelopment actually happened. She never confessed to any grand scheme. She simply insisted the market needed stronger control than it had. It was the truest thing she said all night. And it finished her. Because it told that room exactly what she believed mattered more than their consent. Her board members began stepping back from her before she had even finished speaking. Donors near the door quietly left. The lender agreement went into independent review on the spot. Sunday's vote did not happen. I set the blue token on the table in front of everyone, then signed the cooperative funding commitment beside it. I made sure the room heard the condition attached to it. I would hold no controlling vote on the cooperative board. Blue Harbor would hold no ownership of the land. The vendors would run it themselves permanently. I was giving up the one thing that would have let me guarantee my own preferred outcome. And that was the only version of winning that meant anything to me anymore. Renee did not come to me right away. When she did not hug me. You should have told me who you became, she said. I should have told you who I still was. She picked up the cooperative documents from the table. We start with the books tomorrow, she said. And walked out ahead of me, which felt from her like the most honest kind of forgiveness available that night. Several weeks passed before Hawthorne Road Market started to feel like itself again. The independent review into the lender agreement is still open. Vanessa stepped away from managing the foundation while her board works through what her office actually authorized. I will not pretend to know how all of that finishes. And honestly, the market never needed me to know. It needed to keep running. And it has. The cooperative is real now, not just paper on a table. Blue Harbor buys produce from Hawthorne Road under a long-term agreement the vendors negotiated for themselves. My money sits locked in a fund I still cannot touch and cannot use to control a single stall lease, which is exactly how I signed it. And exactly how I want it to stay. I built plenty of things in my life I could walk away with. This is not one of them. And that is the point. Renee and I meet every week now to go over the cooperative's books together. It is not always comfortable. Some weeks she still asks me questions in a tone that tells me she has not fully let go of the years I spent somewhere else. I stopped expecting her to. Trust is not something either of us is going to talk our way back into. We are building it the same way our father built anything worth keeping. One Tuesday afternoon at a time. The cooperative held its first full board meeting in the market office in early autumn. And I made sure to sit in the back row instead of at the table. Mr. Odell chaired it. reading off a printed agenda he had written out himself in careful block letters. And I watched him call for a vote on a refrigeration repair the way a man calls a vote when he had spent 30 years wishing somebody would finally ask his opinion. Mrs. Calloway seconded it before he had finished the sentence. Nobody looked at me to see how I wanted it to go. That was the whole point of how I had built it. And it still caught me off guard to watch it work exactly as intended. Renee ran the numbers for them that evening, walking through the refinance notes line by line, translating what used to be Vanessa's paperwork into language every vendor in that room could follow without needing either of us to explain it twice. When a question came up about next season's produce contract, she looked over at me only once, and only to ask if Blue Harbor could hold its price through a bad frost year the way we had promised. I told her yes. She wrote it into the minutes herself and moved on to the next item without another glance my way, which felt from her like the clearest sign yet that she had started trusting the plan more than she trusted me. And that I was going to have to earn the second part separately on my own time. Afterward, walking out to the parking lot, Mr. Odell caught up with me and shook my hand again. The way he had the day the certification first got suspended. Except this time there was not any relief behind it. Just plain respect. Your daddy would have liked seeing that meeting, he said. He would have had opinions about the seconding, I told him. And Odell laughed harder than the joke deserved. The kind of laugh a man gives when he is simply glad to still be standing somewhere he built. I saw Vanessa once more weeks later in the parking lot of a grocery store 2 towns over. She was alone. No donors, no jacket pressed for cameras. Just a woman loading her own trunk on an ordinary afternoon. She saw me and did not look away, which I respected more than I expected to. She did not apologize and I did not ask her to. There was not anything left to negotiate between us. No leverage either of us was still holding. She gave me a small, tired nod. The kind two people give each other when a long argument has finally run out of reasons to continue and got in her car. I stood there a moment longer than I needed to, waiting to feel something bigger than I did. What I felt instead was simple. Whatever she had wanted from controlling that market, she was not going to find it in a version of the world where people got to choose for themselves. I hoped, for her own sake more than mine, that she eventually found something that did not require anyone else's surrender. Then I got in my truck and drove home because my kids were waiting on me to help close up the stand. I still work the melon table most weekends. My kids still argue over which melon looks most like a football. And my daughter is still usually right. A customer stopped by not long ago, someone who had been in that community center the night everything came out. She looked at the old wooden table, then at me, like she was checking the two things still matched. You really are a billionaire? She asked. I really sell melons, too. I told her. She laughed and bought 2. I set the blue token back down beside the scale, where it sat every weekend since my father first handed it to me. Vanessa once looked at that same token and saw proof that I had failed to become anything. These days, it means something closer to the opposite. It is proof that a man can travel a long way from where he started without ever needing to pretend the starting place was beneath him. I used to think success meant becoming impossible for anyone to look down on. My father understood something better than that. Success meant becoming powerful enough to choose what you refuse to stand above. If this story moved you, please subscribe so more people can hear it too. Have you ever had someone judge your life before they knew the whole story? Tell me in the comments.